Hello, welcome back. This video is just a recap of 2013, the year in review. No doubt it has been a great first year on YouTube. Certainly, it has been a year where I bought the least compared to 2008 through 2012. Compared to those 5 years, I would say I bought the least this year, but I probably had more fun this year compared to those years. And a big part of that is the YouTube comic community. I have a big thank you for everybody that make the hobby fun again for me. One of the great things about YouTube, and I have discussed this with other member quite a few times, is to me YouTube is the modern fanzines. One of the things that was great growing up in the 80s or starting collecting in the 80s and 90s was there was an explosion of fanzines out there. And being a curious person that I am, I always enjoy reading the fanzine. And that's where I get the bulk of my comic knowledge, if you want to call it that way. Was reading articles and writings and interviews that was brought to us collector back in the 80s through the fanzine pages. And I think the modern collector today don't have something equivalent to that. And that's kind of sad, but in a good way. I think YouTube has provide a lot of the very similar stuff that fanzine used to provide. Years ago, you know, fanzine books that were contributed by the fan. For those that have the skills and ability and opportunity to sit down and interview writers, creators, that's great. But not all of us have the access. These days on YouTube, we get a lot of great old footage of interviews with many creators, and so be able to see and hear what they talk about is fantastic. So YouTube today has brought to the new fan the virtual fanzine that it is, that we as oldies used to enjoy. Hollow Mouse made a video just a day ago, I think, and I watched it. It's a good one. It's and one of the great thing about YouTube for me is I feel like I'm learn something new on a daily basis. Every time I go on YouTube and surf around and watch a few videos, no doubt I learn something interesting almost daily. And Hollow Mouse video mentioned Pete Sanderson, I think, and I thought that was interesting. I never know or heard of Pete Sanderson, but as a fan who wrote a lot of letters to DC and how he got the ball rolling with the fan page there, that's great. That's something I did not know about. He brought out a whole bunch of fanzines as well as the Marvel Age books. The Marvel, I had all of those too. And back in the 80s, one of the things that I enjoy buying and reading was the fanzines. And you may have seen me bringing out this one in my earlier videos when they're talking about the alternate ending of X-Men 137. So back in the 80s, this is how I learned about the alternate ending of X-Men 137 was through the interviews that was done in magazine like this. It's a lot of great fun. And then over the years, every time my favorite artist like Bill Singovich is featured in a fanzine, you betcha I buy it. It's great. One of these days I will do a video on Bill and hopefully include this fanzine. And then of course you have this one here with Neil Adams, and then this one here with Jim Lee. So yes, if you haven't checked out Howler Mouse video, I think you would enjoy it. And the Marvel Age stuff is great. I'm pretty sure I bought a big bulk of those issues when it came out, and it's a lot of fun. So back to the YouTube thing. Today with the extensive amount of videos on YouTube, you literally can enjoy the hobby, the other part of the hobby, not just the comic books. You can enjoy the history of the hobby. You can enjoy the history of your favorite creators in ways that back in the 80s and 90s, this is the only means, unless I'm not sure how else can you get to read what Bill Sinkovich were thinking back then, or what his thought process was. But now with all the videos on YouTube, you see all kind of old interviews with Bill doing sketches. So it's fantastic. I think the young collectors today definitely have access to a lot of stuff us oldies can only dream of having when we were in our 20s. And that goes with the comic books too. You have no idea how tough it was back in the 80s to collect back issues. Forget the 70s is even worse. Okay, more difficult. I remember buying a few back issue here and there through mail catalog, and can you imagine eBay without the pictures? Back in the old days, you sent 25 cents. I did. I actually put a coin in an envelope with other piece of paper and receive catalog from dealers, and it's just a printout inventory of what they have, and you mail in what you wanted and with a check, and they mail you the book. So it was, I wouldn't say it was scary, but for some reason part of me said that back then the few dealers that were selling books through the catalog were really good, honest dealer that know how to grade. So often the book that you receive in the mail were not all that disappointing as far as what was advertised and what you get. For those that have more experience or any experience in ordering back issue through the mail back in the 70s and early 80s, let me know what your experience was. But for me, I had a few experiences and they all were good. I had no complaint. I didn't buy a lot because I just didn't have a lot of money. But but that's how us old collector used to buy back issues. Unless you go to a convention or live near a lot of comic book stores, that's the only mean to get your hands on a lot of back issues that were hard to find. These days on eBay, Bing, you can find what you need on a daily basis for the most part. So you know, it's as far as my collection, 2013, as I mentioned, was a year that I bought the least. But if I had to pick out two books, and I can only pick out really two books that I really wanted for years, okay? But it took me this long to get my hands on them, so that it give you an idea of patience, okay? These two, my two favorite buys of 2013 is this book and this book. And I can tell you, I wanted this book since the day I was Neal Adams fan. And this year was the first year that I actually bought two copies of this book. One actually last Christmas. The lower grade copy was in the collection of David that I bought that come around Christmas time last year. And this high grade copy is the only other Green Lantern 76 that I ever owned in the 30 plus years of collecting. So, and this is my first copy and last copy that I will buy of this book. So that's just give you an example of me willing to sit out and wait for the right copy. You know, and that's what part of the fun is with the hobby. You know, I don't know what make other people happy as far as being a collector, but for me, having the book is wonderful, but the hunt is just as gratifying. I wouldn't say more or less, but being able to sit and wait for 30 years and then buying something like this for a great price, on top of it being like a kind of like a perfect central book that I treasure, well worth the wait. Same thing with this copy. Anyhow, thank you very much for making 2013 a great year for me, a great welcome into the comic book YouTube community, and who knows what 2014 will bring. Hopefully more of the same. Well, anyhow, Happy New Year, and I hope the new year will bring you collectors more wonderful books. Okay, until next time, thank you for watching. Bye.